Hi, and welcome to this edition of Skills, part of the Grain Market Outlook 2020. So, I'm going to talk through some tips on how to improve your skills and those of your team to make the most of the Grain Market Outlook information. So, skills, as you can imagine, is a great broad word, but what I'm going to do is break down a couple of skills in relation to improving your response and action to the market developments, such as the other webinars and access to the resources that you'll receive as part of Growing Market Outlook. I'll briefly touch on time management, delegation, skills matrix and training, and also a bit on communication. But as mentioned, it's just a top line summary with links to the more detailed content. These are all valuable assets needed to complement each other and the sessions. So once you know how to physically use the data provided by the AHDB MI team, how do you make the most of this? And how do you bring your team on that journey with you? I'll refer to a list of webinars and resources, and these will all be available on the AHDB website, and the full details will be listed at the end. So first up, we're going to do a short bit on time management. So the main point of reference here is these secret time stealers, where we think our time goes and where it actually goes are sometimes completely different. It's a bit like when you see your bank statement at the end of the month and you realise where your money's actually gone compared to where you think it's gone. The advice from Alistair Gibb of Cedar Associates is to write a time log, so a bit like the one that's just come up on the screen now. This is where you specifically list down what you've been doing and for how long, usually over 3 days. And this is something that's part of the Professional Management Development Scheme that AHDB runs. The delegates are asked to complete this time log over 3 days and compare their planned activity versus their unplanned activity. And they're also asked, which priority rating is it? So you might have some unplanned activity that wasn't a high priority, but it's taken an hour or two of your day. The value really comes from analysing the data afterwards. Once you've recorded into this sheet, what was planned, what has slipped in that was not planned at all, and where have these low priority items come from? When you have this information, you can ascertain if there's a better way to use your time and if there's others that can help you. On the webinar link below, you'll hear from Will Oliver, who's an arable farm manager in Leicester. And he made a note to say that when he did this time log, it made him realise how much of his work is unplanned. And during the webinar, you'll understand how much savings he's also made as a result of doing a time log. So you've done your time log, and now what do? You understand where you can delegate, of course. So this is about a balance of allocating responsibility, providing an individual with some autonomy, but at the same time not overloading and also ensuring they have that accountability. It's a very empowering tool when used effectively, but I use those words quite wisely. And we'll talk a bit at the end about communication, how to communicate this. The point about this exercise is understanding where a £10 job is and where a £100 job. So your first task on delegation is identifying these tasks. So your £10 jobs might be something like cleaning the yard, tractor driving, carting grain. And your £100 jobs are those strategy jobs, staff strategy, pricing, marketing, looking at the AHDB MI page, for example. So if you have somebody who's being paid a £100 job, you don't want them doing a £10 job. So delegation is looking at those jobs and who should be doing what. It's about the right person for the right role. When we run our Effective Farm Manager program, we talk about delegation in the first module. We then ask delegates to go back to their farm business, put the delegation plan into place and come back and tell us how it went. So one of our recent delegates, Andrew Peebles, who's a farm manager at Valcourt, managed to release 70 hours of his time at peak time, purely down to paperwork. He was spending so much time on paperwork that actually it really didn't need his role. It was for another role. So there we go. There's a bit of time spent. Next up, we have what we call the skills matrix. So we're looking at delegation and you want to hand these tasks over, but really you need to understand who is the right person for the right tasks. So a skills matrix helps you to focus on the individual. There's plenty of examples of different skills matrix. You can find these on the AHDB website. But really, the main focus you need is the list of competencies or specific jobs related to that role, as you can see on the left-hand side. So, for example, if you had a general farm worker, you might have things such as health and safety checks, soil testing, spraying, carting grain, etc. Then next to this, you would have their required level of training. So where they should be to be fully competent in that role. And then next to that is where they are at the moment. So, without teaching to suck eggs, it's as simple as if they need to be a level 4 and they're currently level 1, that then identifies the gap of where you potentially need to put some training into that individual or an action plan. And don't forget, you always need a review date. So as I mentioned, there are some templates, so please feel free to click on the templates at the end and have a look. It's really all about how to get the most from your employees and your team. And once again, we have a case study. So this is Matt. He came on our Effective Farm Manager program, and as a result of using the skills matrix, identified some skills for his team and recognised actually some of the team wanted to be more involved in the manager's decisions and started planning a succession plan. Another point also to raise about Matt was doing the jobs that he enjoyed as opposed to what I needed to do. So that's the £100 job versus the £10 job. But equally, if you don't enjoy doing the marketing or the pricing, and there is somebody in your team that wants to develop those skills, then this is a great opportunity to identify that in the skills matrix. So finally, but really most important, how do you communicate all this? I mentioned at this beginning that actually if you get the communication wrong, if you start listing to your team that you need to do a skills matrix, you're going to delegate, then you might get an adverse reaction. You might get the impression that the team don't want that from you. So this is a topic in itself. There's a webinar again led by Kim Stafford, and it talks through the detail. So the first step is understanding your own style, and there's a great quiz where you can answer a few questions and it helps you to understand how do you like to receive communication, but equally how do you communicate in a general approach. It then talks you through about how you put yourself into other people's shoes. We're not all the same. We are all different. And actually, if you understand yourself and you understand that of your team, you'll have a better chance of communicating more effectively and not missing those messages. And then we go on to talk about checking understanding by asking. That's really important because if you're asking somebody to go and do a task and you've assumed that they understood, they'll come back and you might need to repeat that. You might have waste associated with that, and your time log soon comes back with unplanned low priority tasks. So we're going back in the circle, communicate effectively, and we try and eradicate those. And finally, linking in with that is that don't assume. So as mentioned, there's a whole webinar about this. It's an hour long, so I would recommend that as a priority. So we talked about delegation skills and skills matrix. We talked about training and communication. So it's very important that you utilize these as a package, especially if you're looking at what you want to do with your team. And as Kim Stafford always advises, it's different strokes for different folks. So make sure you're considering those different strokes. So our final case today on communication. So we had Pete, who's an arable beef and sheep farmer, and it's a family run farm, and there's even more need for communication on your family businesses because that's where you underestimate the value of having those meetings. So as a result of coming along to the course, Pete went back and said we're going to have a structured family meeting, and he's now saving up to 5 hours a week, which could be better spent. And I'm sure Pete's got some great hobbies he'd prefer to be doing. Okay, so to summarise, as I mentioned, this was just a brief overview to try and pinpoint some of the skills that you can do right now back in your farm business. and linking these all with that grain market outlook. Time management. Log down your daily activity and identify what's planned versus unplanned, what's high priority, what's low. If market prices and outlook data is your area of interest, then it's sure it is planned in and it's high priority. However, if it isn't for you and there is someone in the team who'd like to take this on, delegate. And delegation should always be about the right person for the right job. Don't do the jobs that you enjoy, do the jobs that you should be doing, and equally for your team. If it's a £10 job or a £100 job, who should be delivering it? Equally, if you have someone ambitious in your team or the next generation, think about the succession planning. And then why not get them skilled up and trained on how they should be utilising the market information and how you can get the best from that. So this leads nice onto skills matrix. If there is somebody who wants to be trained up, put it in their skills matrix. Ensure it's followed up with an action plan. Finally, communicate all this. Keeping your team engaged and communicating regularly will empower them. But equally, you would be surprised what information can be shared. Share that load. As mentioned, here's the link and the resources. Sorry, that was a quick whip through, but you can find all of our webinars. I think we're up to about 20 webinars now, covering all skills and training across all the sectors. And then if you were interested in some of the courses that I mentioned or any of the templates, you can download them all from our website. Have you got any further questions? Please feel free to get in contact with me and I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.